morning world. Daniel Larulian here. I hope you're all having a beautiful morning so far. I thought I would start talking over the next week a little bit about ritual. It's also the main question that I get from, students and people messaging me, but also friends who are trying to find their own spiritual practice. And that's the thing, it is a spiritual practice. A lot of people say, oh, I'm spiritual, but they don't really do anything. And from my experience and from my point of view, and especially from a tantric point of view, you're not really, a spiritual person if you're not doing anything. So what do I even mean when I say the word spiritual? And that's going to be different depending on who you ask. But when I use the word spiritual, what I'm talking about is this deep desire to seek and connect with something that is usually unseen unless we allow ourselves to connect with the deeper layers of ourselves that we talk about in Tantra. And some people see it as out there. See this little sunbeam shining through, so it's a perfect example. It could be something out there, or it could be something inside. It could be internal. And the yogis and in Tantra, they don't really see it as anything separate, the difference between out there and in here, because it all kind of emanates from this mysterious void, this mysterious source, or whatever you want to call it. And using practices, ideally daily practices, ritual practices, to find your own unique way to connect and communicate with that aspect of the universe. And I see a lot in the modern world and the new age spiritual movement that everyone's talking about them being spiritual, but yet they don't have a regular ritual practice. And from my own experience and from pretty much every, real, authentic spiritual tradition, they all had regular ritual practices, usually every day. Now, I admittedly don't do my practices on point, disciplined every day, but I do have a process and I have a way of operating that is based on traditional methods. But the thing is, it allows me, because I have a structure and a process, whether that's 1 minute of the day or whether it's this elaborate ceremony. There's two types of ritual that I'll go into in a second, but it's a way to actually know that I'm making progress because I'm doing it in a structured, measured way. So the two main types of ritual that we see pretty much across the board in a lot of different traditions, but I'm obviously going to talk mainly about Tantra, is devotion and ceremony. So devotion is like doing your daily reps or, your weekly reps. It's building your spiritual muscles. It's practicing the techniques so it installs those concepts in your body. So when you do step into a more a bigger elaborate ceremony, whether that's with a group or, by yourself, you automatically start to work in a certain way because you've developed this language with your internal world or the external world. So that's what we do with chakra practice. That's what we do with working with deities. That's what we're doing, going through the motions, doing different types of breath work. And that's what Tantra is about. It's kind of mixing and blending all these different types of things to put us into a trance-like state. Once we get all these tools down and, we kind of create our vehicle to ride, because there's a lot of connection between this idea of riding in ritual. We ride the ritual process with our consciousness, with our body. And so that allows us to kind of shift into that altered state. And then we can start to work out, what we call magic, start to communicate with the divine more efficiently. And start to create this feedback loop where we're either sending out questions and getting back answers, or we're sending out kind of intentions. This is what we call manifestation. But obviously it is a natural human process. We do it sometimes without thinking, but in every case I've ever seen, learning your stuff and actually getting a solid process down in order to work with whatever tradition you're doing is always going to be beneficial, always. What we do at Ritual Embodiment with the 200-hour yoga teacher training. So you will be obviously learning asana practices, all the different poses, and becoming a regular mainstream yoga teacher. But what you'll also be doing is learning a traditional tantric ritual practice that you'll both be able to use in your day-to-day life and apply to even lots of traditions outside the tantric framework, because that's why Tantra is really good, because it can kind of be like inserted into a lot of different spiritual traditions, and that's why I really like it. And that's kind of what the idea that the original Tantrika and the yogis had as well. But you'll also be able to authentically run other people in groups, and you'll have to graduate in like through a proper ritual and ceremony framework. You know, there's so many people going, yeah, I'm running ceremonies, and have no idea like what they're doing. And yeah, so we're really trying to build some solid ceremonial practice. For years, I've been asked to and thought about creating like a little introduction to ritual structure and ceremony so people can start to do that, but it really is like a big process. It's an initiation, and that's why the only way like I want to do it with people and I feel authentic in doing it with people is when they come to this yoga teacher training, because you've got 6 months with me to really deep dive into these practices, and then come out confidently, both in your, like the rest of your life, you'll have these ritual practices which you can use for whatever you want, and you'll be able to build and make your own unique versions of these. But then you'll also be properly trained to take people through ritual practice, whether you weave that into a yoga class or do it as a ceremony in itself. You know, you'll have all the proper tools and skills to do that. I think it's really funny that so many people, like in the yoga world, have no idea how fundamental ritual practice was. You know, even in the non-tantric versions of yoga, classical yoga, it was still all about mainly meditation, connecting with the divine and connecting with these deeper parts of ourselves, and developing ritual-based practices. And so, you know, I've said before, like I wrote a little post that, like, you know, summoning and invoking goddesses is so much more traditional yoga than downward dog, because downward dog is only like a, you know, all these poses only came in the last 100 to 200 years max. And so, yeah, I'm really just trying to re-educate people on it, because so many people still don't understand the true power of yoga. So that'll do for today. I will start talking about ritual and a little bit more about classical tantra and yoga over the coming weeks. But yeah, if you feel drawn to anything that I've said, yeah, shoot me a message. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll speak to you soon. Daniel Arulian out.